The riots in Southport and Rotherham illustrate a modern phenomenon, how they started, how they developed, people adding fuel to the fire, and so on. Quite literally, this morning there's a story about um, a, a fellow who was videoed, sort of keeping, making a fire bigger, and you can ask questions about how the riots started, what encouraged them, but in the end, there's also the question about the riot itself. And somebody engaged in a riot is engaged in something which is pernicious and needs to be stopped. And it goes all the way back to Tudor times. In fact, the only bit of Shakespeare in his own hand, the only speech of Shakespeare in his own hand, is the Stranger's Case speech in Thomas More, a play that he didn't entirely write, but he contributed stuff to. And this play, or this speech, is so fascinating because it's a speech about where Thomas More stands up in what would now be Trafalgar Square, and he addresses the crowd and tells them that they are condemned for rioting, but that the king might be merciful. And if he was merciful and sent them into exile rather than beheading them, they would go to France and the French would say, well, why are you here? Oh, we've been sent into exile by the king for rioting. What was the cause of the riot? That we hated foreigners. We hated the French. Are they going to get? Are they going to get succor? Are they going to get lodging in France for that? And that's really the point. And Thomas More says, I'll give you a bit of the speech. I mean, grant them removed, and grant that this your noise hath chid down all the majesty of England. Imagine that you see the wretched strangers, their babies at their backs and their poor luggage plodding to the ports and coasts for transportation, and that you sit as kings in your desires, authority quite silent by your brawl, and you in ruff of your opinions clothed. What had you got? I'll tell you. You had taught how insolence and strong hand should prevail, how order should be quelled, and by this pattern not one of you should live an aged man. For other ruffians, as their fancies wrought with self-same hand, self-reasons, and self-right, would shark on you, and men like ravenous fishes would feed on one another. Say now the king, as he is clement if the offender mourn, should so much come too short of your great trespass as but to banish you, whither would you go? What country, by the nature of your error, should give you harbour? Go you to France or Flanders, to any German province, to Spain or Portugal, nay, anywhere that not adheres to England? Why, you must needs be strangers. Would you be pleased to find a nation of such barbarous temper that breaking out in hideous violence would not afford you an abode on earth? Whet their detested knives against your throats, spurn you like dogs, and like as if that God owed not nor made not you, nor that the elements were not all appropriate to your comforts, but chartered unto them, what would you think to be thus used? This is the stranger's case, and this your mountainish inhumanity. It's so beautifully put by Shakespeare. And in Southport, the tragic stabbing at the children's dance on the 29th of July became the tinderbox for misinformation-fueled outrage. And this began with a LinkedIn post, it now seems, from a local called Eddie Murray, who, based on hearsay, claimed that a migrant had committed the attack and posted this message on LinkedIn and then took it down. But within minutes, this post was going viral. The damage was done. Screenshots rapidly spread, amplified by viewers, by influencers like Andrew Tate and far-right figures. The volatile claim morphed into evidence as it passed through multiple hands on platforms like Twitter and Telegram, viewed by millions within hours. And fueled by misinformation, an organised protest devolved into violent riot in Southport on the 30th of July, marked by clashes with police and fires set by rioters who had gathered in collective rage. And although we can see how the riot developed, it doesn't excuse the riot, does it? Just days later in Rotherham on the 4th of August, violence reignited over asylum concerns, with hundreds of rioters targeting a Holiday Inn Express housing asylum seekers. Participants like Levi Fishlock and Jake Turton were seen making the situation so much worse, stoking fires, supplying debris for projectiles against the police. Both cases highlight how unchecked digital claims can set real-world fires, literally and figuratively. It's no good turning around and say, oh, this is a two-tier policing. Yes, it is a two-tier policing, because the people who ignited those fires, yes, they were involved in direct rioting, but the people who wrote those social media posts, the people who agitated, the people like Tate and others, Farage, who asked these questions, they were targeting their base. Why is it that they have not faced police questioning, while others who were actively involved in the riot have? The misleading social media posts, the misleading questioning, the ratcheting up of the atmosphere, fanning xenophobic fears, transforming words into violent actions. As the government and Ofcom contemplate reform, it's clear that digital accountability and television accountability, media accountability, must play a role in curbing this sort of destructive spiral.